My name is Brad Muniz. I'm a partner at Sobel & Company. I would like to welcome you to Sobel Insights. Sobel Insights is a weekly series to provide some brief information on various topics. Our goal is to keep these sessions to 10 to 15 minutes. At this time, we're not offering CPE. If you have any ideas for topics or speakers, please feel free to email me. Today, our topic is telecommunication review. Charles, or Chuck DiPietro, is the president of CommLogic Partners. He's been in the industry for 37 years. That's a while, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of change in the telecommunication field. And I'm sure that that's why you're an advocate and you've been performing telecommunication audits. What is a audit of a telecommunication expense, Chuck?
Well, an audit is a review of inventory and expense. The FCC has released some statistics that 1 in every 4 telecommunication invoices are billed incorrectly, and over 90% of those are in the phone company's favor, the carrier's favor, meaning that the customer's paying too much. You know, technology being a very fast and ever-changing part of everyday business, you know, carrier mergers and acquisitions create billing issues. For example, Verizon itself has 3 different platforms that they rely on to bill accurately. First one is, of course, the billing database that is about the inventory of what services you use and how much they pay. And is used to generate your invoice. But there's a facilities database that says what type of what buyers, what service to your billing. And then there's the switch programming. Now, all of these databases, they interface, but they don't quite integrate well. So that's the reason why billing errors occur. Another reason to do the audit is that there's statutes of limitations on claims. So any undetected or undisputed claims result in unrecoverable dollars. So that's primarily why companies get involved in doing audits.
So I guess the audit accomplishes looking over the charges that you're being assessed for the most part and making sure that they're applicable.
Right. So when you review charges, you're looking at an invoice, right? Behind it is a bunch of information. The invoice tells you what to pay, but there's the service records that tell you, why you pay it. And those service records will break down the cost of just a plain old telephone line into its most granular billing components. And those are the things that you check. You make sure that they're being billed according to, regulatory statutes or any type of contractual compliance by the carrier or service provider. And you make sure that all of those billing components make up the cost of accurate cost of that line.
Okay. Are there any particular type of companies or organizations that would benefit the most, that they would be the best candidates to have this service, looked into?
Well, I mean, companies that have grown or downsized, maybe have split off. Those are good candidates. Certainly, companies that have never done it before. But there's really no company that's not a good candidate. Every sector of the business, I've been doing this for, like you said, 37 years. I've done hundreds, if not 1,000 or more audits. And I could count the ones that were unsuccessful on one hand. IT professionals in organizations right now are tasked with so much to keep the business alive and running. They're putting out fires all day long. So in order to, they rarely have time to be proactive in managing expense. And quite honestly, the learning curve that's associated with, getting the expertise and conducting the audit, which is a relatively short-term project, makes it impractical for them to do it themselves. So that's why it becomes an outsourced type of service. And the success rate is so good because you're outsourcing it to companies that's what they do.
Well, and it's funny you say that. I was going to say is that I'm an auditor, but yeah. I couldn't look at a telephone bill. I look at my own telephone bill, and I just know that my 3 kids are still on it. Can't get them off, and even though they're grown, and I I look at it very, very briefly, hand it to my wife, and she pays it. And therefore, if it's wrong, I can blame her. But I mean, mine's a simple cell phone bill, and I cannot figure out what is on there. So,
And you want to know something? You're not unlike, Fortune 500 companies where, the bill comes in, it's plus or minus 5%, 10%, you pay it, you don't look at it. I'm guilty as well. I don't even look at my own expense, most of the time. But think about this, think about when you subscribe to the service. Do you remember what you paid for it when you first bought it? Probably not. I mean, I don't. So if it creeps 3% one month and 2% the next month, and it just keeps creeping up, by the time, it could easily get away from you. And if you're not comparing it to what's best in class pricing today, you don't even think to go back to the carrier and question your bill. So those are the things that create a business like telecommunication expense auditing and management. And, a guy like me can make a decent living at it, for 37 years.
How long do the audits take? I mean, I'm sure that's difficult. If you're looking, and we didn't talk personally, if you're looking at my personal, services, that's easy. But you start getting to bigger companies, I imagine it's difficult to say. But on average, how long would the audits take?
Well, the thing, first of all, you can't audit personal expense. There's just not, that's not the way companies work. In order to do an audit, a company has to first give us authorization to do it, and it's all business related expense. But how long does it take? It depends on, there's no set answer for that, I might add, but it depends on the number of carriers, it depends on the number of invoices, it depends on the number of locations, accounts, and the spend. Give you an example, if you're spending $100,000 a month and you have one Verizon bill, that's a pretty easy audit. But if you're a national retail organization and you're spending $100,000 a month and you have services provided throughout the country by a variety of different carriers, you could easily have a couple of dozen carriers, a couple of hundred invoices, many accounts. So the audit is different. But case in point is this, is that it's got to be done one bill at a time, right? And which means that we try to tackle the biggest expense first, because that's where you usually get the biggest bang for your buck. And when you do that, the cycle to start to create savings happens within 2 or 3 billing cycles. So of course, the more accounts you have, the more carriers you have, it gets extended a little bit. But basically, once you start to review an account, if there is opportunity for savings there, you're looking at 2 or 3 billing cycles if everything goes right. If the savings that we were expecting didn't generate on a bill, it might stretch out to 4. But that's the way you're looking at it. About 2 to 3 in most cases, sometimes 4.
And it's funny, you said savings. I'm sure it's very difficult for you to say what the typical savings is. So as an auditor, I always get, how long is it going to take? And, and that's right off the bat. Oh, I spend around, the people probably say, I spend around $5,000 a month. How long is my audit going to take? Well, I can't just tell you. And how much are you going to save for me? Is there any typical savings, or is there a typical response that you give to that type of question?
Well, you're my accountant, so you know what it's like to do my taxes at the end of the year, and I'm sure mine take a fraction of what you spend on some of your other customers. But savings typically range somewhere between 15% and 35%. That's the sweet spot. I would say that is probably 80% of our results. And I'm not saying ours, industry results. But I've had some that do more, and I've had some that do less. But the sweet spot is somewhere in between 15 and 35% savings.
That's big. I honestly thought you were going to say maybe 3 to 5% savings.
Well, it comes from a variety of different places, Brad. There's one is identifying, a dead wood, unused or underutilized services that have been replaced by newer services but never disconnected. those are identified. Billing errors, of course, are identified and backtracked as far as they can go to negotiate a credit or a refund. Feasibility studies are done to see if you change from one technology to the other, what type of operational efficiencies you might be able to gain and what the savings might be. And then renegotiating or negotiating carrier contracts that haven't been renegotiated, in a while. A lot of carrier contracts have automatic renew clauses on them now. So if you didn't question it, 90 days before your contract is up, it automatically renews at the old rate. And maybe for the same period of time. And sometimes those terms are 2 or 3 years. So it's important to review expense just in order to get some information about when these contracts become due, so that 90 days ahead of time you can send the carrier notification that you want to review it, and then you negotiate some best-in-class pricing that's accurate for the time that and the services that you're subscribing to.
And it's funny you said discontinued services. I can imagine there are a lot of companies right now that have moved to online fax service, but I bet you they still have their fax line in their offices.
Yeah, well, you make a good point, but moving from online fax services, you have to drag the number with you, so that's a little different. But I mean, I've run across services that were replaced, to the tune of $30,000 a month that were never disconnected.
Wow.
Hospitals are notorious for that kind of stuff. Yeah, to your point, identifying the services that are unused, and no one knows something in wireless expense, that is probably the biggest opportunity for savings. I just got done auditing 600,000 wireless devices, and the number of unused devices was astronomical. Savings was into the millions of dollars.
Wow.
A year. Well, you can imagine what the expense is when you have 600,000 devices. But putting right and mobile expense is the sloppiest, because users aren't on the right rate plans. You have a corporate account. There's the dead wood out there, services that are devices that haven't been, but then they're all on maybe wrong data plans. So right sizing those, putting those devices on the right groups or pooled plans and whatnot generates a lot of opportunity for savings.
Right. And if there are these savings, I mean, that's what's critical for businesses, is that they've probably suffered in other areas that now that they can consider using these savings for. There's other benefits that come from it. It's not just a telecommunication audit. Don't just look at it as, well, I'm just going to save money there. There are probably other areas that this will help too.
Yeah, well, I guess the benefit, the few benefits. One, there's no financial risk to conducting an audit because it's a shared in savings or contingency site compensation fee, right? The customer gets to know that they're not wasting any money, and they get clear visibility of where their telecom expenses or dollars are being spent. But most important, the savings then can be redirected to fund other initiatives in whole or in part that have had budgetary constraints. And if you want to give it back to telecom, you can have a technology refresh. If you want to grow your company, you can hire, maybe with some of the money or all the money, you can hire a couple of new salespeople, or tar the roof, pave the parking lot. Whatever initiative that has some budgetary restraints on it can either be relieved in whole or part. So it's kind of a win-win situation. And I like what we do here, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you and your group about it. And thanks for selecting me to be one of the people in your group.
No problem. I've always been an advocate of this. I mean, I got to stop, my dial-up modem line that we're still paying for.
Yeah, the AOL, you got mail?
But I just like the sound that it makes, so I just play it every once in a while. It's like the movie Dumb and Dumber. You want to hear the worst sound?
You know what, you want to be honest, man, we find those circuits out there all the time that haven't been looked at in, 15 years.
And the IT person gets blamed for it. And the IT person, to your point, is sitting there trying to get somebody's PC back up and running. And you're saying, why aren't you focusing on the modem line?
Exactly. Back in the day when, you were screaming at 128K, right?
Right.
Those days are gone.
So Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on today and exposing this type of service and information to people out there. And to your point, it's a win-win because it's a shared relationship. It's not something that's coming right out of pocket. All it takes is a phone call. They got enough lines probably in their office to call. All it takes is a phone call to reach out to somebody like you and say, hey, let's just start the discussion.
Hey, you know what? Now's a good time because, people are working remotely now and, that whole IT environment is changed. And whether you're going to go back to the old way or kind of stay with the new way, it's a good time to do the work.
Great. So Chuck, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and hopefully you found this information relevant to your business and reach out to Chuck and see how he can help you out. Thank you again, Chuck.
Thanks for having me.